Sorry about that. Cool. I'm very happy to be welcoming you. I know you've been following the network for a long time. You're also a part of 𝐴𝑛𝑑𝑟𝑒, which we follow for a long time and have built a strategic partnership with. So we're very happy to have you. I'm just so you know, for the audience that is watching us, we are live streaming on our Facebook page. You can share the link to this talk on all your social platforms. It's very easy to share. And in the next week, we're going to be uploading everything on our social media, but more particularly on the YouTube channel. So the audience has the time to revisit this talk, and you can share it whenever you want. So all the materials that all the lives that we host with the European Network of Migrant Women within the framework of the Migrant Women Reality Watch, they're not lost. They're put in an archive that we have, sorts of an online archive, which is YouTube, for instance, where people can revisit, and that way we make sure that we have, a collection of migrant women's voices. So that's just a little tip for the audience. So yeah, Andreia, I wanted to ask you first if you could present yourself, the work that you do, and yeah, let's start with that, and then we move on.
Okay. So I am a qualified journalist. I'm a qualified primary school teacher as well. And I have been writing about feminism since at least 2014, 15. I have worked for the Brazil Huffington Post blog and several other media. I have been writing for QG Feminista, which is the biggest radical feminist publication in Brazil. And now I am writing for 4W Pub in English, talking about female issues. Another thing that I do, I consider myself a feminist, activist, and whatever, but I am also a supporter of feminist campaigns. That's my thing. So I'm a affiliate volunteer as well, so I support that campaign. I support many collectives in Brazil, Collective Time, Collective Soma, Collective Fala, which is for Brazilian indigenous women. So I'm a supporter. So some of the things I do normally is I have this big thread on Twitter about female issues, right? And it has over 3,000 links to female issues already, and I'm still updating. I still have many things to put on that thread. The other thing I do is I try to spread the feminist theory, and as a journalist, I write basically about female issues. On the other hand, I am a writer. So I started writing when I was 10 years old, poetry mostly, but also some dark tales, dystopian tales and stuff like that. It was very dark. And no one seemed to want to be around me. I was like, this kind of weird, odd teenager that no one wanted to hang out with. So I basically decided to develop a personality, and this personality was like to be the funny person, the person who cracks jokes, and then everybody goes like, okay, Andreia is all right. And also about this time, like when I was 14, I decided to be a journalist, but I decided to be a very special kind of journalist. I was very fond of this Brazilian journalist and writer called Luiz Fernando Veríssimo. Do you know him? Yep. And he writes about current affairs in political satire. So that's was my dream job at the time, So the funny bone was already there. So what I do basically is supporting female feminist campaigns whenever I can. And because of that, I have started writing about this as well.
Good. And one thing maybe that you forgot to mention is that you are also like an aspiring comedian, right? I mean, you did mention humor before, but that's also part of your portfolio, let's say.
Oh, well, that's the thing. Because of that funny bone that I thought I developed for making friends, basically. When I was living in the United Kingdom, I actually considered giving it a go to stand-up comedy. The thing is, I hate the stage and the camera hates me. So I don't like it. But I still had my comedy writing going on. But basically, it's not like I don't crack jokes and stuff like that. I just basically rant about things, and that's how I got things to be funny when I decided to be funny. So basically, the book we are going to talk about tonight is my third comedy book. The first one was The Grumpy Guide to Quit Smoking, because in 2020, to be precise, on January 1st, 2020, before the lockdowns for COVID, I actually managed to quit smoking, but I was really, really, really furious. I was like, I was thinking of situations, I would go down the streets and don't know when it's snowing, and then you want to lay down on the snow and do a snow angel. I was actually, one day I was like walking down the streets, and then I saw, because I was in France at the time, I saw a tree that was surrounded, it was packed with cigarette butts, right? I wanted to smoke so much. I was like, if I could lay down here, there was no angel in the cigarette butts. So I started like putting these jokes on social media, and people seem to be enjoying very much. And then I decided to get everything down on a neater format, and then I expanded the jokes, tips to quit smoking. People sometimes say drink lemon juice, get some chewing gum and stuff like that, drink a lot of water. And so I was like mocking the situations, the way I was reacting to them, and that seemed to work. And so I got everything neatly in a publication and self-published it. And then I was doing kind of the same thing for feminism, especially the things that men talk about feminism, that feminism is misandry, that feminism is like sexism and stuff like that. So I was cracking jokes as well on social media, and people went like, you should talk about, should do a grumpy guide to radical feminism. And then I said, challenge accepted. So I went and wrote it and self-published. But it took me a year to get to this book, because this book is the bigger one so far. The first one is it's a pocket book, but 70 pages. It's just a few jokes to test the water, Then the second book was more thought about, has a lot of quotes from radical feminists. And then it has around 100 pages. But this book, it's nearly 200 pages, because it turned out I had a lot to talk about motherhood.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that leads me to my second question, which is previously you did the Grumpy Guide to Radical Feminism, which has been translated in quite some languages, as I understand it. It's in Portuguese, it's in English. The other languages I don't remember, but you will tell us more now. And now you have the Grumpy Guide to Motherhood. So I wanted to understand more or less, what was the thought process behind it, and what made you transition, from feminism or radical feminism to the topic of motherhood.
Well, it's all connected, isn't it? Because I learned very early, because I have been an activist for birthing women since 2012. Okay, basically I was having my second child, and then two childhood friends of mine were having their children as well. And we were like on our Facebook chat, like, yay, second child, yay, yay, yay. But at some point, one of these friends was telling me that she was going to have an elective C-section. And I was like, okay, not my business, and left it at there. But the other friend, she was studying nursing, and then she came to me and asked this question, Andreia, did you have a normal delivery with your first child? And I said, yes. Why? Well, have you heard of the scenario of obstetric violence in Brazil? And I haven't heard. I had heard, because that's the thing with narratives, you know, the mainstream media narratives that only reach the masses, you know. We don't get to know. I have heard of many women going to have elective C-sections. I didn't know what was going on. I thought it was a choice. The mainstream media told us it was a choice. It was their choice. My body, my choices, right? Turned out it wasn't like that, right? It was a scenario where women are terrorized to have C-sections. They are told that if they don't have a C-section because they have asthma, or because they live far away from the hospital, they and their babies will die in childbirth, in a normal delivery. So she asked for help. That's why how I became an activist for birthing women in 2012. So basically, there are many thought processes to get to this book. First of all, you know, I am a migrant woman. A migrant woman. Like, I was born in Brazil, raised in Brazil, and left Brazil in 2004. Since then, I lived in Portugal. Then I moved, me and my husband, we moved to the United Kingdom. Then we moved to Spain, then to France, and now we are in Belgium. And because of all these changes, motherhood has been quite challenging, especially because of language. So if you go and actually study the feminist theory, you're gonna find many works like Adrienne Rich talking about motherhood. Motherhood is highly important for feminism, you know. So it was not quite actually a jump. You know, I talk about compulsory motherhood. I have a whole chapter in the Grumpy Guide to Radical Feminism about compulsory motherhood, because motherhood is compulsory in a patriarchal society. But also, I wanted to complete the series of Grumpy Guides. You know, I have another book coming, hopefully soon. I might self-publish it as well, because I can't find a publisher for this book. This book is called The Truth, like, you know, truth, right? And it's a dystopian tale where all the women left patriarchal societies, and they are in hiding now. So it's the struggle of them trying to keep their safe places now safe away from men. They left, and they left with all the kids. So, but for completing this series, I thought of many things, you know, maybe a grumpy guide to the end of the world, you know, because of COVID and stuff like that. Because I was thinking, right, at the start of the COVID lockdowns, I was terrified. I don't know about you, but I was terrified. I made backpacks for like the zombie apocalypse. That's how I was doing. I was genuinely terrified. but I didn't work on that idea. There was also like a chance of going like a grumpy guy to go into philia, you know, because there were many stories that I could tell that could be funny. But then, you know, I have been an activist for birthing women since 2012, and motherhood has been a blast for me. But I know that motherhood has many issues because we are living in a patriarchal society. Right now, we have the United States leaking a draft of a judge who wants to overturn Roe versus Wade, which is the law that allows American women to have abortions. In patriarchal societies, when rape is so widespread, the prosecution and conviction rates are so low, motherhood is compulsory. But in this book, The Grumpy Guide to Motherhood, I try to lighten the mood. You know, I know there are many issues and I try to address them. But in this book, I really try to get the funny side of motherhood, if you can have it.
That's great. I just wanted to put the audience into context just a little bit. Andreia was talking about C-sections in Brazil. I'm also Brazilian, so we share this same you know, country pattern. Brazil has actually one of the highest rates in the world of C-sections. This is not because they are widely available and they have been deemed, you know, safe for women, and it's because women lack this choice, and they lack this choice of really, you know, choosing between a natural birth and a C-section. Most often than not, doctors and nurses or the medical staff that accompanies the doctor who is doing the delivery, they force the women to have C-sections because it saves them a lot of time, it saves them a lot of money, and yeah. So this is the situation that we have, is that so many women have gone through C-sections, and what seems like, you know, something random actually turned into a pattern in which there's a lot of violence, not only obstetrical and medical, but also psychological and even physical, and sometimes even sexual. So this is what we're talking about. I'm very. Go ahead.
Can I add something to that? Actually, the elective C-sections in Brazil is a world champion in elective C-sections. And these elective C-sections are the reason, the main reason for iatrogenic prematurity in babies in Brazil, because comes to 38 weeks, the doctor says it's time for the baby to be born, and then the babies need to be in an incubator, so they're born premature, because the only real sign, this is something that I try to talk about in the book, the only real sign of a baby being ready to be born is to start labor.
Yes, so you do address this in this book then, even though it's more of satire-like book or comedy-like book, you do address these issues that happen to women.
Yes, like in the chapter about pregnancy, I try to address everything, you know, the good and the bad.
Okay. You've told me behind closed doors that in the Grumpy Guide to Motherhood, there was a dedicated section to migrant mothers. And you told me that in specific in this chapter about migrant women, you talk about mothers' sense of loneliness. Because of the experience of my mother, who is also a migrant woman, I know more or less what you are talking about, but if you could explain to our audience, why did you choose to talk about loneliness? And why do you think that loneliness is, you know, at the intersection of motherhood and migration?
Well, the thing about mother loneliness is that I didn't actually experience motherhood loneliness. You know, I had my kids, both of my kids were born in the United Kingdom, and they had, at the time, at least in 2008 and 2013, at least up to then, because I left the country in 2016. I don't know how it is now, but at least up to that point, they had a whole system of, you know, when they say that it takes a village to raise a child, I felt like that. For starters, you know, and this I talk about in the book, you don't get to see an obstetrician through how your antenatal classes or antenatal appointments, okay? You only get to see the midwives, okay? But they are fully qualified to attend you, as long as you are in a low risk pregnancy. But the other thing is that they make up a file with all your medical history, and the mother takes the file home. Have you ever heard of it? Because this doesn't happen in Brazil at all. You know, you take a file home with you, and then you have to bring it back at every next antenatal appointment with the midwife. That gives you a sense of empowerment. You know, it's like when I went to my appointments, I wasn't asked to give in my file. I was asked how I was. The midwives were assessing me according to what I would tell them, not according to some file. You know, that gives a sense to a woman who's pregnant, a sense of like, they are humans, they can be listened to. That's amazing. It's something that it's completely different from what we have in Brazil. What we have in Brazil is like the doctor knows everything, and a woman who is pregnant knows nothing. That's how one of the ways they convince so many Brazilian women to have elective C-sections, because they know best. We don't know anything. And so basically, I didn't feel motherhood loneliness, but I basically can't remember any Brazilian woman I have ever met who hadn't experienced it, you know. And then I experienced motherhood loneliness in Spain, in France, and even a bit in Belgium. Not that much, because now I am, my kids are in school, but even then, I don't have here in Belgium, or I didn't have in France or in Spain, the network of help that I had in the UK. Apart from the antenatal classes, the woman is fully entitled, and like she gets a lot of information. She, at least in Scotland, she gets a pregnancy guide for free from the health system, you know. And then she is fully entitled to make an informed decision about the way she wants to give birth to this child. And then you go and choose wherever you want. If you want a C-section, if you want a normal delivery, if you want a bathtub during labor, or if you want a home birth, it's entirely up to the mother. Nobody interferes. And then after you have your child, there will be a health agent who will go to your house for 10 days after you go back to your home with your baby. And then if you need help with breastfeeding, she is there. If you need help with changing nappies, you know, making the baby bottle if you're not breastfeeding, how you're gonna look after yourself. And then after those 10 days, she leaves you lots of other leaflets of information about your health, your child's health, a pool chart, you know, because there is a whole chapter in the book about pool, because mothers talk about poo all the time, at least in the first years, you know. So in this chapter is about women, you know, and this chapter is called "What About Women?" Because I'm trying to female issues. Men always go, "What about men?" Right? So I'm talking about women in this chapter, and later on, further on in the chapter, I talk about motherhood loneliness and its many forms. And one of the things is to be a migrant woman, you know, because as a migrant woman, for instance, I'm not going through many issues right now because my kids are 13 and 8 right now. But if I was a new mother, I could be in a lot more. I would be facing a lot more issues because I still don't speak the language of the country. I don't speak French or Dutch fluently. And then these are the issues, some of the issues that migrant women may be facing, you know, if they don't speak the language, how they're going to get child benefits, how they're going to apply to it, how they're going to get like housing, you know, housing benefits, how they're going to even become citizens, you know, to register as a Belgian resident and stuff like that. So I decided to add this part about migrant women because, of course, there are many issues. I didn't go in too deep because it's still a humor book, but I do talk seriously about the serious issues migrant women in general might be facing.
It's very important points you bring, because I really think loneliness, I mean, is, you can say loneliness, but you can also, you know, there's so much intersecting in that. And I think that, like, if your administrative status is in order, then that's an added value. But then for undocumented women, it's even worse. And I feel like when you get to a new country, even if you do speak the language, motherhood or motherhood related services are not going to be in the priority of those organizations that give you information. So you kind of have to look for that yourself. And when you don't know anybody, when you don't speak the language, if you are undocumented, you don't dare to step outside and to go find out for yourself. So I think it's very important that you're addressing that in the book. Yes, and you know, I wanted to ask you, and you already answered that a little bit before, but as a migrant woman living in Europe, what were the main barriers and challenges that you faced as a migrant mother? You lived in so many different European countries that I think the system is very not much alike. But if you could find some commonalities to express your experience, what would be the words that you would use?
Well, you know, becoming a mother in Europe, being from Brazil, was not that much of an issue in the United Kingdom, even though it was. One challenge clearly was that when after I had my first child, I got pregnant for a second time. But then I changed cities. I was in Edinburgh and then I went to Glasgow. And in Glasgow, even though both cities were in the United Kingdom, in Scotland, the health system was completely different. You know, I had no issues whatsoever first time round, but the second time round, because what they do is you take like over-the-counter pregnancy test. You buy at the pharmacy, you buy even at like the pound shops. And then if it's positive, you tell your GP, your general practitioner, and they refer you to the midwifery team. okay? So the second time around, this just didn't happen at all, you know? And they don't give you antenatal appointments until you are 11 weeks pregnant. So came 11 weeks, 12 weeks, and nothing happens. I should have get a letter from the midwifery team booking the appointment, but I didn't. And then I started asking for them for my appointment. And I was asking them that every day. I was calling them, and they started saying that I was starting to bother them, you know. But then I don't know if they would do that to you know, someone who is a citizen in the country. I was just like I am Brazilian, but I have Portuguese citizenship. So I was basically there as a Portuguese. I was legally there in the United Kingdom as a Portuguese. So I don't know if they do that to women who are resident, who are British or whatever. I know that happened to me. And it turned out that I had a very, very traumatic miscarriage, because they didn't give me my appointment. And then when I finally got it, I was going to be 16 weeks pregnant only, which was quite late. But 3 days before that, I started to have bleeding, which I didn't have during my first pregnancy, and a lot of you know, stomach cramps. Then I talked to my GP. I went to see my GP, and they just sent me home. Nothing, not even you know, medicine for the pain or anything like that. That was on a Friday. And then on Saturday, the cramping got worse, the bleeding got worse. I went to the nearest local facility, hospital facility, and they just did the same, you know, no examination. They just sent me back home. And then the next day, I went back on the Sunday, and they finally got me at least an ultrasound scan, a baby scan. But apparently, the baby seemed to be the size of 9 weeks, not 16 weeks, and there was no fetal heart rate, no fetal heart beatings. And they just sent me back home. This was the third day. They sent me back home, and they said, if I put like one of these thicker menstrual pads on, and it fills up in 1 hour, I had to call the emergency services. So at 2 o'clock on Monday, I just felt like, you know, a gush coming out of me. And then I went to the toilet, and I put the pad on, and it filled up in 10 minutes. And then I passed out, and then my husband found me lying on my own blood in the toilet, and he called the emergency services. And even then, the next day, on Monday morning, afternoon, they spent all day. I spent all that day in that smaller facility before they sent me to a maternity ward. And then when I got to the maternity ward, they just put me in a bay, like in triage. And in this bay, which was open to everybody, a man came, put my leg in one stirrup, put my other leg in another stirrup, and then did this, and started, like, he put his whole hand inside of me, started pulling fetal tissue without any warning, without any anesthesia. You know, I don't know if they treat British citizens like that. I know that I was treated like that. And then the second time around that I had a baby, because I have 2 children. So this was my second pregnancy. When I got pregnant for a third time, then I made friends with some British women, and then they told me, look, if this happened again, you know, what happened to you in your second pregnancy, you have to go to this and this and this. And then I found out the system I should have gone through. So I'm guessing that happened to me because I was a migrant woman, you know, because I really didn't know. And then this happened when my third pregnancy, you know, when I was having some issues, normally in the UK, you only get 1 to 2 baby scans. Okay, for my third pregnancy, I got 7. Because then I knew the system, because then I talked to British women. So yeah, it can happen to everyone, I think, who is not, you know, not aware of the way things works. And for migrant women, it's going to be even harder.
Mm-hmm. It always, in the end, it's always this informal, both formal and informal woman networks that really help the most women, and not the services that are state funded or that are really, you know, made up to function specifically for that. And I'm very sorry about your experience. It really reminds me of this Palestinian refugee woman that I met here in Brussels. She was having a miscarriage and they didn't even pay attention to her pain. And then they left her to, she could have died, but they left her in a hospital ward, and she just miscarried on her own without any medical assistance. Nobody was there to help her. She didn't speak the language back then. And unfortunately, these cases happen more time than we think. But since they're not part of the mainstream media narrative, like you were saying before, that's why I like the concept of your book so much, because you do create a narrative on your own, and you do enable women to have a narrative on their own, and to on their words. Yes, and so now here in Belgium, of course, since your kids are a bit bigger, then you don't really need to access those services. But did you encounter any difficulties or challenges being a mother here in Belgium? Because I know that in Belgian schools, it's very looked down upon on the parents of the child if they don't speak the languages of the country they're living in. Because supposedly, if you need to help with homework or tests, then the kid doesn't really have that support net or support system. And actually migrant mothers end up really being mistreated, or you know, a very much covert kind of intersection of racism and sexism. Did you experience that in any shape or form?
Not in Belgium yet, because I made some financial sacrifices to put my kids this time in an English-speaking school. So the instruction in this school is only in English, so you know, it's okay with us. I did get that in the United Kingdom. Even though I love the United Kingdom, I would go back there in a blink. For the school system, I did get some issues. The first issue was with my first child, because up to 3 years, both my kids were basically solely understanding Portuguese. You know, my kids are boys and are late speakers, you know, but they could understand most of things in Portuguese. So when my first child went to a nursery, to preschool, at the age of 3, what I kept seeing was a lot of like prejudice against him and us as foreigners. You know, the main thing for us was that I would be like listening to other parents, mothers and fathers, having their like parents' evenings with the teachers, and they would be saying things to these people. Oh, your child's speech is developing a lot, is progressing, and stuff like that. But when they turn to me and my husband, they would always say that my child's English, see the difference, speech to English. And the funny thing was that my child is a native speaker of English. Unlike me, he is, they are, both are. And there was no kind of reason, but because they knew that we were Portuguese, you know, this would be happening. And like, at least in this first preschool, my child only got friends with a Polish girl and a Chinese boy. Nobody, none of the British kids, the Scottish ones, English ones, etc., wanted anything to do with my child. You know, so that's like really heartbreaking for a mom. Fortunately, when he got to primary school in a mainstream public school in Scotland, at least his class was really, really mixed up. You know, he had a boy whose parents were French, a girl whose parents were Italian, you know, Indian, Pakistani, and you know, it was much more healthier mix. Because I'm from Rio de Janeiro, you know, for me, a place where there are only white people almost terrifies me. You know, it's just like I go like, what is going on? Where are the black people? Where are the brown people? You know, it doesn't sit well. It doesn't sit well with me. So a few issues, but we have to acknowledge that this could almost be considered like first issue, first world problems. You know, basically, as a mother, what really gets to me now is because I don't have much time to teach my kids the language of the country they are, because we lived in so many countries. They didn't have the time to develop other languages apart from a bit of Portuguese and to be a native speaker of English. And so when I am home, I'm kind of stuck, you know, unless I go out with my kids and do stuff with them, and I do, but they just can't go and play with the kids in the street because they are shy and afraid. That's one of the other things for migrant woman who doesn't speak the language, and the kids doesn't speak the language. Because when my kids go to Brazil, even though they can speak a lot of Portuguese, their Portuguese is gringo. And then they go to Brazil and they speak that kind of Portuguese, and then they are laughed at, you know. And I even had this experience when I was a primary school teacher in Rio de Janeiro. I had a girl who was my student, and she was 9, who was born in Miami. And her Portuguese was very good, but not like a native, you know. For a native speaker of Portuguese, a Brazilian, she lacked, you know, maybe the jeitinho. She lacked, like, you know, the savoir-faire.
The colloquial expressions and
yes.
stuff.
And like her Portuguese was what you could perceive as a Portuguese, a standard Portuguese. It doesn't have an accent. So all of that, you know, like if my kids start speaking proper French from now on, their French will have like this English accent to it when they speak in French. And that will make it difficult for them to make friends, because the other kids are going to mock them. You know, so these are the basically difficulties, because people have to understand motherhood is not only, it is also for mothers, of course, but motherhood always involves mothers and their kids. So we are worried about them.
Of course, you're worried about them, and that's very much the weight that you were talking about before. Even if you yourself said that you felt like you had a lot of privilege, even though some things in your story contradict that a little bit. I think that it's very much about, you know, regulating your life for the life of your children. Of course, I can't speak. I'm 29. I'm not a mother, but that's what I've observed through through my friends who are mothers, and through my own mother as well. You know, there's a lot of, especially for migrant mothers, I think, you know, the sense of sacrifice you were talking about, that you did a lot of financial sacrifices for your kids to be able to have a good school. You moved around, so obviously you worked a lot in maintaining a stable environment for them, and I think that's very much part of motherhood, even if some mothers perceive it as positive and others negative. Coming back to your book, I was wondering, how can the audience get to it? Are you going to be translating it into many languages? How difficult it is to publish a book when, you know, about mothers, about motherhood, especially in these times where it's almost considered a crime to say that, you know, a woman is, yeah, that women are mothers. Like in this era where people have this discourse about birthing bodies, babies havers, how difficult it is to publish a book on mothers.
Well, my books are self-published, so I can have full control of the content, you know, because I don't know if you had seen Sheila Jeffries lately on Facebook. She was dropped by her publisher because they put her on sensitive readers, and she couldn't talk about female issues, you know, everything was transphobic. So in this book, I don't dehumanize women who are mothers at all. We talk about motherhood as it is. Only women, I say, you are an adult human female, and only adult females, well, only females can be mothers, right? So the main difficulties are because it's self-published, you know, so it needs a lot of people to be knowing about the book. The Grumpy Guide to Radical Feminism got some traction. I think I have managed to get at least 5,000 copies, ebook and paperback, sold so far in 2 years. But that's still very little, you know, because like I have 17,000 followers on Twitter, you know, but I don't have 17 paperback books sold on the Grumpy Guide to Radical Feminism. I'm not hoping to become a bestseller with this book. You know, I just really wanted to get this out of my chest. These stories about motherhood, but in a funny way, funny takes, you know, talk about all the things that many people have talked about, some of the things. That's the interesting about my self-published books, because many times the Grumpy Guide to Radical Feminism tries to sum up the main tenets of radical feminism. And in this book, The Grumpy Guide to Motherhood, I try to sum some of at least the more lightweight issues that we can have in pregnancies. Of course, in pregnancy and motherhood, you can have many issues, you know, but when everything goes okay, when everything is all right, that's what the book talks about, because it's not all right. There are many issues, and some of them can be funny. So the book so far is on Amazon. So whoever has Amazon, in some places there will be only the option of the ebook, even by Amazon. And I don't know how many translations I'm gonna get, but for the Grumpy Guide to Radical Feminism, I managed to get, at least so far, the book is on 8 languages. So it's English, Portuguese, Spanish, French, German, and coming, Dutch, Italian, and Greek, you know. The thing about this, because it's self-published, because it's not a bestseller, it's probably going to happen the same thing to the Grumpy Guide to Motherhood. If I do get translations, I'm probably going to get a Spanish and French very soon, which I can do by myself, the way I did with the Grumpy Guide to Radical Feminism. Because I just went on Google Translator, put the whole thing in Spanish, and then I got someone who is a Spanish speaker to proofread. Same thing with the French one. So it might be a possibility in a month or two, who knows. But for the German, Dutch, Italian, and Greek, I don't know how I would be going this, because especially the German, Italian, Dutch, and Greek, these are all contributions from feminist friends, you know, because they were like, can I translate this bit and this bit and this bit from your book to put on Instagram, to put on Facebook and stuff like that? And then they ended up asking if they could translate the whole thing. And I said to them, because not only am I a migrant mother, but I'm a freelance journalist, so I don't actually pay the house bills. I don't, you know, with that, not even with the books I wrote. So they offered the translations, you know. So if anyone would like to get in touch to translate the Grumpy Guide to Motherhood to other languages, I'm all ears. I just can't offer. What I have been offering is, you know, they have been very, very nice, and they like, you know, just put my name as a translator, and like I will be very, very proud. They offered that to me, and I have been, you know, this is one of the things of like motherhood, you know, all this sisterhood, like all these networks where we get in to get things done. That's a very interesting point to make.
It is indeed a village of women raises a child. And helps the mother in the way, like you said. Just what you were talking about, we have some viewers live, and I'm reiterating your call. If any of you is please interested to translate the book, Andreia's book, please reach out to her. I've left her Twitter account here on the comments. Also the links to both the Grumpy Guide to Radical Feminism and the Grumpy Guide to Motherhood, so you can check it. And yes, we're arriving to the end of our Migrant Women Reality Watch. I wanted to know if you have some last words before we leave. If not, it's okay. I just prefer to give you the opportunity.
Well, I would like to say to everyone that, you know, let's talk about motherhood the way it is, because motherhood is compulsory. Let's talk about the feminist theory. You know, motherhood is highly important. That's something I forgot to say before. Remember those two friends, one who wanted to have a C-section, an elective one, and the other one who was telling me about obstetric violence. That first mother, she had her elective C-section. She was told by the doctor that she has asthma, and then but then I soon discovered that obstetric violence is a feminist issue. Of course it is. You know, it's violence against women. It's male violence against women as well. And when years later, I told her that obstetric violence was a feminist issue, then she was all on board with my activism. You know, she was like, I will own up my choices, my choice to have 2 elective C-sections, but I will never tell another mother that they should be having one, you know, because I understand the issues. I understand that obstetric violence, it's violence against women. So that was like, so this is what we have to do. We have to be talking to women, and women have to know what's coming their way if they are mothers. So here's these are my final words. Go in, if you don't know it yet, go and get the Grumpy Guide to Radical Feminism, and go and get the Grumpy Guide to Motherhood, and let's make life life for everyone on planet Earth much better.
Great, famous last words. Hopefully not the last, but great last words for our Migrant Women Reality Watch. As I told you, this talk is being live streamed and then will later be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. So for those people who missed it, there's still a chance to catch up. This live stream stays on our page, so it's shareable anytime. It's commentable anytime. It can be shared on all platforms. I wanted to thank you, Andreia, for being here with us today. It was a pleasure having you. And yeah, I hope everything continues to go well with you, being a mother, very importantly, a woman here in Belgium. And I hope that this country treats you well, the way that you deserve. And yes, thank you so much for being with us today and for accepting our invitation to be part of our Migrant Women Reality Watch.
Thank you a lot for having me here tonight. It was a pleasure to be here and talk to you about this. Thank you for the opportunity to, this is my launch event for the Grumpy Guide to Motherhood. It just went on yesterday and went on live on Amazon. So the ebook and the paperback are now available.
Okay, as I did it with my older aunts in Portugal and Brazil, I'm going to send them your book again, because they did laugh a lot with the guide to radical feminism, which is, I think, very good when you're learning feminist theory. It's nice to have something sometimes a bit light, since we deal with so much, disturbing and heartbreaking subjects. And I'm very, very honored that 𝐴𝑛𝑜 could provide you the platform to launch your book. So yes, see you soon, and let's hope that this, there will be more grumpy guides in the future. Take care, Andreia. Bye.
Bye.